Welcome to Tourism Talk. I'm your host, Mary Hammond, Director of the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have a special segment today with friends from Lowertown, the Artist Relocation Program. We have Paulette Mentor from the Mentor Gallery, Paul Lorenz from Studio Mars, and a special guest, George Lundeen, visiting us from Loveland, Colorado. George is a sculptor, and he's done those wonderful Lewis and Clark sculptures that are on the lawn at the Museum of the American Quilter Society. I think you'll enjoy today as we have conversation. And before the tape started rolling and we were just casually talking, I'm like, oh, that's good. I think that everyone would enjoy just this casual conversation about sculpture, how everything is coming together in Lowertown, and your kind of view for sculpture in the future. So Paulette's over there shaking her head. Of course, she plunged right in there with a giraffe. Caused quite a stir around town.
Didn't it?
Yes, actually, and it's gotten some good press around the country, but jumped right in there with her sculpture. I hope that you'll see it, George. You haven't seen it yet?
I'll make sure I do.
I know it.
Paulette will too.
But George, how long have you been sculpting?
I've been sculpting since 1966, since before you were born, I think.
Oh, no. No. But that's okay. Thank you for the compliment. But I'm sure you started out when you were young and
I did. I started out when I was a freshman in college and had always taken art classes before that, but had never been introduced to sculpture. And once I was sculpture and working with clay, it just kind of all came together for me. And I haven't slowed down since.
Did you start out with the historical pieces, or you just sort of started out more just pulling different types of materials together?
Well, I think you start out just trying to make something that looks like something else out of clay, and once you do that, somebody says, well, boy, that sure looks neat. And so you think, well, maybe I'm going to get good at this one of these days. And about 20 years later, you finally find out, well, maybe I've learned something. But sometimes it takes a long time.
Does that sound familiar, Paul?
It takes a very long time just to get that understanding about what it is you're supposed to be doing or meant to be doing, or what something is really supposed to look like or not supposed to look like.
But then you wake up some morning and you think, I've forgotten all that, and I no longer know.
It's almost every piece you start, you have that shocking realization that you're starting over once again, and it's an interesting process to have to almost re-educate yourself at any given moment. Time does that, just keeps moving on.
In the world of art, failure is always an option. And so you worry about that. Well, you worry about that once in a while. And when you really first start a new piece, I think you have a new design in your head and you think, is this really going to work? And then as you work through it, of course, you change it. You do different things so that it is successful, I think. But you always have that question in the back of your head, is how good you really think you are.
Well, that also the difference between sculpture and painting. Seeing we're both painters, it's a different, on a certain level it's a little bit different, because working in 3 dimensions, especially working in large 3 dimensions, is
it's much more difficult.
Difficult to find that.
You guys are flat.
That's exactly.
Paulette's, hers are not flat. Hers do have dimension, even though it's paint.
Some dimension, yes.
But
then again, they're not sitting there with something that's filling up a huge room and going, oh, this isn't happening. But when you're using...
but in all of these things, it's not so much the media you work with. I think it's the message you try to convey. It's the idea, the feeling that you try to give to somebody else, and that's where your talent lies. It's not so much in the craft as much it is. It's between your ears and what you can try to get to the viewer.
Exactly.
Or how somebody experiences it. Much like a musician, it's not necessarily how well they play the piano, but it's that whole feeling that they try to get when they do.
I was a business major. We'll just say that up front here. So never took an art class. So sorry, but I am learning, and like many of the people in our community, we're being educated just from hearing this and enjoying every moment of it.
Well, I don't know about these guys, but I would have benefited greatly from a business class or two when I went to school.
But Paulette's a little bit different. You've been carrying a lot of different artists in your gallery, and your work is not actually the primary work, is it there?
Well, after this past week, it might be. I've been loading up my gallery with my work,
Good.
just so I could have more room to work in the studio. And I don't have a space on the wall to put another piece, so I put all my work out in the gallery pretty much. But I do represent other artists, and will continue to do that.
How did you discover your sculptor?
Oh, you know, a local Paducahn told me about George, and
Not this George.
no, not this George Bandera from Murray, and I drove over there, and the moment I walked into his work area, I knew he could do what I wanted, and I didn't need to worry about micromanaging, which I tend to do. But I just said I wanted a life-size giraffe, and I did not want it cartoony, and that's all I said to him, and he just was so excited to do it and did a fabulous job, I think.
Working with animals would be completely different than even having a historic perspective or being abstract. I remember when Robert Dafford was trying to paint the mules hauling the hogshead barrels of tobacco up the riverfront. This is on one of the murals. And he was trying to get in his mind that what the mule would be like straining with carrying something very heavy. And he had the hardest time finding that. So it's, and giraffes, the look that you were wanting on your giraffe, the straining and actually peeking in your window, it's quite different.
He did a great job.
He did. We thought she was nuts when she was talking about it.
Well, he had done other animals, but that wasn't his primary area, animals. But I think he went to the New Orleans Zoo to I don't know, take measurements, photograph something, and worked on it.
First-hand experience, not just someone
Right.
else's.
Yeah.
You know all about that.
Well, I think no matter what kind of work you do, you have to do quite a lot of research, whether it's abstract, non-objective, realistic, whatever. You always have to come from one place and get to the other, and that involves a lot of seeing and touching and trying to imagine what it is that you want to do.
Just living in general. It's
Absolutely.
your life that is coming out in all of the work. And it's your knowledge up to this moment in your life, and every experience comes out somehow. So the more life you have, the more you can say, and the more you can share in any realm, in any medium. So.
Right. I think whether you're a writer, musician, whatever, you're just reflecting what it is that you've experienced.
And then finding the right way to express that. If it be finding the fabric to bring together a quilt, or the right color of paint, or the right, just the right medium.
Oh, I'm sure.
Struggling here, guys.
Business major over there. Tell us more, Mary.
But there is this kind of feeling that sculpture might be fun in Lowertown, and during the quilt show there was a little bit of sculpture, a little bit not elementary, but wrapped plant.
It was conceptual. It was a conceptual idea.
It was very interesting, and we had a piece of it at the office, and they just took different items and wrapped them. It was the beginning of sculpture, just so people would see some dimension as they walked around the town, and I don't think that was successful.
There's a piece on that photograph of my house that you're showing. That was a small wrapped piece.
And
during that show. That happens to be on that photograph that you have.
I'm trying to think what it was called, Wrapped Up in Lowertown or something?
Something like
something
that.
like that.
It was an idea based on Christo,
Sure.
something that all the artists could be involved in, and finding an object that either meant something to them or that they had that would fit into the fiber of the neighborhood and that related to quilts and fabric. And
Perfect.
it
Well, it sounds like you
fun.
guys have really hit the ground running as far as the art community goes. I mean, obviously, you've moved into town from somewhere else.
We've all moved here. from
Yeah, and
somewhere
you
else.
kind of have
Yeah,
to
it does.
get started and just go with it. You have to start doing something, and hopefully all the work and personalities and results start
But
forming
obviously
something.
you've had some good local support. I mean, community tends to embrace you and wants to have you guys here.
Oh, definitely,
Don't
definitely.
look at you as the pariahs of the society.
Well,
Those
maybe
weird
a little
artists down
bit.
there?
That's okay.
Less than normal people that might be down by the river.
But you took a neighborhood that was, I hate to say deteriorating, but it was our most historic neighborhood in the community, but it had not had a lot put back into it in recent
Sure.
years. And here are people who've come in and taken old buildings or a lot that had no building, as Paul did, and Studio Mars is a new structure, but it blends in with the neighborhood. Paulette took a four-place that had sort of been restored maybe 10, 15 years ago, and was functioning as a fourplex,
Right.
and now it is a work of art in itself. You have to see her cabinets. They're craftsmen.
Love to see it.
Craftsmen with granite over them.
Gotta see
No,
it.
you
That's
gotta
not
see it.
historic on the inside.
Got to
It's
see her drawers.
contemporary.
That's,
You gotta see her drawers. That's right.
that's for another episode.
Yes, another
Everybody wants
episode.
to see my bathroom. You know, so
Yes.
That's the
Maybe
mayor
I'll-
was in and let me show you her bathroom. Excuse me, Mister.
Well, George, you've restored three businesses or homes
Yes.
in
Well, no,
Loveland.
they're just big old downtown businesses that Loveland, Colorado was probably much like Paducah 20 years ago, where the old businesses at J.C. Penney's and the Wards and all those people had moved out of town or moved to the shopping center, left the old buildings in town. They were very, very reasonably priced, and we needed studio space, so you could pick up 10,000 square feet of building for almost nothing. And at the time we had a historic designation, and we were able to rehab those buildings at a reasonable cost. And now we have several studios in those buildings, and it's really worked out well.
Good. We have room here for you. And buildings. So,
Well,
who knows?
I'll have to have my Kentucky connection, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
That works.
you do, and as I've said before, you are forever bound to us now, since we have some sculptures that should last.
I think that happens to all of us when we put
Yes.
pieces in what I call terminal locations, where they probably won't be moved for a long time. You were just talking about putting a piece in, what's the location you were?
Rockefeller Center.
Rockefeller Center, New York City.
Yeah.
And once you do that, now you'll always have a reason to go back to New York.
Exactly, and it's not a piece that's going to be easily moved, so
That's it.
that's its home.
Good thing.
Well, congratulations.
Yes,
That's quite,
congratulations.
quite a
Great.
feet.
How many sculptures do you think you've done that are out there?
7.
Really?
No,
Wait a minute.
no, I
all
don't
your
know. We've done, I guess hundreds of
Hundreds.
life-size pieces and bigger.
Sure. Well, Mr. Schrader fell in love with your work, and
He's a great guy.
yes, he is, and he has inspired us all here in town, and loves art, as you know, from the quilts to the flood wall, and now the sculptures, and hopes to tie the Quilt Museum more with Lowertown, and so that we just see different types of canvas and different types of artwork.
Well, it's nice to see somebody that has a dream or a vision and really takes off and grabs it by the throat and makes it into reality. Because without those kind of people, we all have dreams, we all have visions of what we would like, but he and his wife seems to be two people that can take that and find the way to make it happen.
They have, and they've been able to reach out and make friends with people with specialties and draw them into their circle, and that's been a wonderful resource for the rest of the community. Do you think that you'll have sculptures in Lowertown?
I think
I
we
hope
will.
so.
I
That would be nice.
Definitely think we will. We have an idea coming together, and we're trying to talk to certain people, see if we can get it going. But we have it's a pretty big project, and
It's just
we're
a the idea stage right
Yeah.
now.
Right.
So.
Well, we're still in the infancy stages in the entire neighborhood.
Certainly.
At one time, there were sculptures up and down Broadway, very modernistic sculptures. In fact, in front of the Yeiser Art Center was one. They were 70s, I guess, in the 70s. There is still one that I can think of, and I believe it's in the fourth block. And
On the sidewalk? Or it's just,
and it's just very abstract. But there were a series of them. So
Well, there's some wonderful pieces out on Jefferson, too. Very impressive to have pieces like that out there. Very nice.
It
We
does.
should have them everywhere.
everywhere.
All over
Public
the city,
art.
you know.
Well, we're
Easy
way
to do.
Yes, yes, yes. It is only
And
takes
it is,
money, right?
You know,
Yeah.
it is
Seems
easy
to
to
be
do.
the
It does,
only
yes, it
drawback.
does. Everything takes money, though. You just
Yeah.
have to have the will and want to do it, and you can make it happen.
But it
So,
can start as basic as the interpretation during Quilt Show and having the sculpture that everyone made themselves on their own front porch or inside
Right.
their home.
Well, and here in Paducah, you have a start. You've got the seed. All you have to do is nourish that, and you'll find out that you'll get local people that turn into terrific artists in many ways, whether they're sculptors or painters or whatever. All they need is that local support.
And we're finding that in Lowertown, too. There's a lot of, now that Lowertown has been around for a few years, there's a lot of local artists that come out and want to talk about what they do, and they find there's finally an audience of other artists, their peers, that want to talk. And we're seeing that even with the River's Edge Film Festival. A lot of local filmmakers are suddenly, they have a venue to show their work, and it's great to see the local and regional area start coming around and wanting to be part of it. So it's all good.
Had no idea there were so many filmmakers in Western Kentucky.
There's a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of filmmakers.
That's a real treat to see them, and they were quality. But to be watching and see people you recognize in some of those films was like,
and
wow, I
houses
didn't
they're
even
walking
know.
into,
Yes, right.
and yeah, exactly.
Now you have a son who's a filmmaker.
In Daytona Beach.
He participated
area.
last year in the film
Yes,
festival.
he entered a
good.
film, was accepted.
And we showed it opening night.
Yeah.
Daytona
Yeah.
500.
On the
I
big
paid
screen.
him
It was
to.
great.
No, I
No.
didn't. I didn't. But I was just thinking about how Paducah is so fortunate to have so many areas of art with the Four Rivers and the film, the Quilt Museum, Lowertown Artists, music. We have a symphony. We have
The college.
absolutely everything.
That's terrific.
Exactly.
Absolutely
There's a
everything.
lot happening in
Yeah.
a town of this size.
This size, it doesn't appear to be small, you know, it seems very large with all the amenities and with the new riverfront and so on. It's just the place to be.
3 out of 4 weekends, I'd say, there is a gallery opening. There is some type of invitation to enjoy art and come in and meet the artists. And it's just, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Challenging because you sit there and you start to think about how to become a collector, where are you going to begin, and what type of art, and mixing art, and the fact that it doesn't have to be blue because your bedspread's blue.
Oh,
or
thank you.
Pink, you know, right. I'll always remember being in the Quilt Museum with someone pointing to one of the pieces on the wall and saying, "Do you have that in pink?"
Oh my gosh.
Is this Sears?
But it's a learning process for our whole community and the people who visit here.
Well, and you know, that's okay too if you want to match your couch, really and truly, in my view. It's not a requirement, but you know, if you really want to do that and it makes you happy, then that's fine by me.
George, do you have other sculptors that work with you? You work completely by yourself?
No, lucky for me, I have a younger brother that's also a sculptor. My wife's a sculptor. And I have a sister-in-law that's a sculptor.
Wow.
And a cousin that's a sculptor.
Oh my goodness.
And then we have probably 40 sculptors that live and work in Loveland.
Sure.
And we have a small town of Loveland, Colorado, just north of Denver. But we have 2 of the best foundries in the world that are located there. So we get upwards to 500 sculptors a year that come through town and do a lot of the major pieces you see around the United States are made right there in Loveland, Colorado.
When you say a foundry,
Well, that's where sculptors do their castings, their bronze castings, stainless steel castings, aluminum castings, all those things. And the foundries it's quite an art town in itself, Loveland, Colorado, kind of like Paducah. We started about 30 years ago with sculpture being the main medium of choice for most of the artists in town. But since then, we've gotten quite a good group of painters that come into town, because now we have some galleries. We have the biggest sculpture show in the world every year in the summertime, where we'll have 500 sculptors show up for one weekend.
Wow. Do you have a school there?
We have had several schools in Loveland that teach all kinds of painting, drawing, sculpture. And so it's really turned into a nice town, a good place to be, because as a sculptor you need a lot of physical support. You have a lot of people that do nothing but make wood bases and stone bases. Other people, we have 2 photographers in town, all they do is shoot sculpture and paintings, just art
Sure.
photographers.
Pat Blue may like to talk with you.
Yes, absolutely.
She's a wonderful photographer in Lowertown. Now, one of our sculptures that is a piece that sometimes gets forgotten is the Washington, the statue, and this was made out of boy, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, like a 24,000-pound red oak tree. And Peter Toth, they called him Peter the Wolf. His family was chased from Hungary back in the 60s, and when he came to the United States, he began to identify with the American Indian.
I'll bet that's a big Indian head with a big feather on his
It is,
head.
yes it is. Did you see it coming in?
Well, no, he came to Loveland 25 years ago, and that's
Yes.
where I met Peter.
Right. He was
And
here
he
20
carved a
years.
big Indian for
Sure.
Lake Loveland.
He kind of looks like from the time period with the patch on the seat of his jeans.
Very
and
interesting guy.
Very interesting. Started with a chainsaw and ended up with a fine chisel. We have a wonderful sculpture by him. They're in every state.
I'm sure it is.
And they're wonderful. Now, I could kick myself for not getting one of the smaller statues that he had for either my own yard or
He made a
inside.
couple of them.
And I'm sorry I didn't get any of those. Do you ever do anything smaller?
I do. Yeah, we do everything from
Everything? Okay.
2 inches to 30 feet.
Oh, well, maybe you're a show in Paducah.
Just a matter of where you want to look at it.
I have space in my
Perspective.
gallery.
It's all about perspective.
Yeah, we can find gallery
have
space
space
for a
in my
show in
gallery
Paducah.
for-
Yes, for a
Oh,
small.
sure.
that'd be-
We do a lot of models. Every big piece we do, we always do models
Smaller
of those
pieces.
pieces, sure.
Gosh, click, 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 click. I can hear.
You know, we have
Ideas.
a sculptor, a piece in Lowertown at Alonzo's.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful
He has
piece
a piece in his
I've been
backyard.
in his yard.
Is there? That's a studio I've not been in.
Yeah, well, it's on the side yard.
Okay.
A lovely bamboo structure. Very nice.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a lot more.
I'm hoping so.
If
Yeah.
you've got open
I hope
space,
so.
you'll usually
Yeah.
find a sculptor that'll
Yeah.
want to put something in
Yeah.
there.
It's the wide range of artists in Lowertown, and as it continues, this program continues, you realize how many art forms there are, how many different art forms. That it does even get to food, which is another art form. I mean, it just continues
Well,
to
it's
grow.
incredible the way ideas bounce off different people. When you
Certainly.
bring a new artist into town, if they've got some interesting ideas, you'll find that somebody else might pick up on some of those.
You may see some sculptures at Cafe Menu. No longer is it just a mound of potatoes, that there are little sculptures even on top of the food, and the way the food is presented these days is just dimensional.
It's
not
an art.
just flat.
Presentation is an art.
Presentation is everything. It's not just flat on your plate. Even green beans these days can be formed into stretching it here.
I think there was a movie like that.
That's true. I've been
Who
watching
said she
Food
was a
Channel.
business major? She's about to get into culinary sculpture.
I
Yeah.
know, look
Oh, I
out.
just took a class in culinary tourism, so that's what it is.
But Paulette and I were just talking earlier about in front of Four Rivers Center, we have these huge lawns there that are just screaming for something to be on there. It's
A
an
lot.
an empty canvas waiting for something to happen.
There's
Absolutely.
probably a committee you can serve on.
That's okay.
So all it
We
takes
do
is
have some ideas for that.
Some
though,
ideas,
don't we?
right.
We
Lots
always
of
have
ideas.
right. Well, if Mr. Schrader continues with his sculpture, there's no telling where Jefferson may end up. So
Oh, yeah.
he has some ideas.
Well, a lot of communities we deal with out west have temporary sculpture shows. Every year they change.
Certainly.
That's a nice
Mesa,
idea.
Arizona, Sheridan, Wyoming, Gillette, Wyoming, all of these places pay the sculptors maybe a small stipend, but it gives them an opportunity to put their pieces in public.
That's a
We
great
sign
it
up
really,
now?
It really works. Pardon?
May we sign up now for that?
Well, I'm not sure just how much work that takes, but I'm sure there's some paperwork and some legwork. But other than that, once you get this situation sorted out, I think it tends to roll on its own.
That's a
We'll
great
look into
idea.
that.
Well, this is just the beginning of conversation that I hope that we'll see much more of, and there's ideas once again bouncing off, and we've been here for a while, and George's first time, and get him over to Lowertown to check out the art studios, and you know, you just don't know. There are several ideas that you've just thrown out there that are new to us, so that's good. Look forward to it. Thank you all for being here, just for some conversation. I believe in just sitting down and talking, and no scripting, just talking, and I hope we'll do it again. It's Paul's
Definitely.
second time.
I know, getting to be, okay. Have to take a break now.
Oh, what's your next project?
Oh, my next project.
After Rockefeller Place.
After that, there's always new canvases to
Yes.
start. Always something getting started, so.
Paulette's got lots of projects. She's,
Well, I'm looking forward to painting
Yes.
again.
I'm seeing that your paintings and talking to people who have bought your paintings, and I've enjoyed seeing the work. Because
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
guess because I knew Paulette as the person before I knew Paulette as the painter. So
Yes.
that's good.
Yeah.
George, this is the first of many trips I hope to Paducah.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
It's great. Thank you all for being with us. Please bookmark our website, www.paducahtourism.org, or pick up that phone and call 1-800-PADUCAH if you have questions about anything that's happening in Paducah, or if you want to know about Lowertown. Second Saturday, a great time to walk around and meet all the artists and see their work in the galleries. The Quilt Museum is open 7 days a week, most of the year, except in that cold winter time. Hope that you'll stop by there. See George's work right there on the lawn. If you see someone rubbing on it, that would be Mr. Schrader polishing it, and with a big smile. Oh, now don't laugh. He's already been out there polishing. And go into the Quilt Museum, see their current exhibit. It is a museum for today's quilters, and this is just another art form, and you'll see very contemporary quilts. Yes, there are always some antique quilts in there because, you know, we love those antique quilts, but and that was a canvas of its own. It was, as they say, more than something to keep you warm. So I hope that we'll see you in Lowertown, downtown, at the Quilt Museum. Please stop by and say hi. And until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.